Ru, thank you, Dr. J, for the introduction. I gotta say, I'm ecstatic to be here with this community. We have such an engaging coach base, just kind of tracking along with the private Facebook page we have, and having had the opportunity to meet a few of you guys in person, I couldn't be happier to be a part of this community. So I'll start off by saying that, and then we'll kick this off with the keynote. So I just need to get access to the screen here for a second. All right. So it looks like we still have a few people jumping on the call, but no worries. We can kind of get into the program overview and slowly work through the keynote. The keynote's about 17 slides, and ideally I can cover most questions that arise throughout. However, like Dr. J mentioned, feel free to enter them into the chat bar. I won't see them as I'm sharing my screen, but I will be able to see them as I get off of the keynote presentation. We'll save the last good 10-15 minutes for some Q&A, which is, that's our opportunity to really dig into the nitty gritty and cover any details or any questions that you may have. That said, I'll start with a quick program overview. As I move through these slides, I may repeat myself a few times, and that'll be good because it'll try and reinforce exactly what we're trying to get at here. If you guys remember correctly from your SGX certification, the way we periodize is through 12-week programs. And within those 12-week programs, there are 3 phases, right? And each phase is broken down into function, fitness, and performance. Now, for today, we're going to be delving specifically into phase 1, which is the workouts that we sent out about a week ago, or last Friday it was, and really hone in on those details and make sure that you guys understand it and that you're comfortable with it. And then as the weeks progress in the next week or two, we're going to look to launch phases 2 and 3. That said, we'll jump right into phase 1 and cover some of the details, starting with what it's about, right? So real quick, a quick refresher, I just covered it. The phases that we program for are phase 1 function, phase 2 fitness, and phase 3 performance. That's going to be a key thing to understand here as we move through the programs. By now, I think most of you have had the opportunity to lay some eyes on the PDFs that we sent over. The nice thing is that those are two-sided, so you can print them out, and that's effectively 3 programs for your client for the first 4 weeks. You'll notice, and we'll kind of dive into it in this presentation, that it's a lot more body weight and owning movements before we move on, right? And then as we get through to phase 2 and 3, you'll notice a few changes in exercise selection and the way we program it. So taking a look at phase 1, again, by now, most of you guys have had the opportunity to look at it. We have 3 workouts. So effectively, that is 3 days per week with a client, right? And these are 3 core programs, meaning that if a client wants to train 5 days a week, ideally, they're doing these workouts as their core programming, and then anything else is icing on the cake, whether that be a running specific program, an active recovery program, meditation program, anything like that, right? And the way I wrote these programs, and with Dr. J, is this is the core foundation. Once we own these, we can look to add. That said, as long as we're not overtraining anybody, the beauty about this is that you can repeat days, right? So if somebody wants to do these core programs 5 days a week, you can train them workout 1 on Monday, on Tuesday workout 2, Wednesday workout 3, and then repeat to workout 1 and 2. Now, again, that was just a generic example, but you get the idea. The best way I see this is if you stick to the 3 core programs, the workouts per week, and add in things like a running program more for aerobic capacity and an active recovery plan. I think your clients are really going to see a massive bang for their buck when it comes to a holistic training program. Moving on, each workout, from my experience in the industry, takes about 45 to 60 minutes to execute with a client. That said, any clients who are new to the program, obviously there's going to be an additional 5 to 10, maybe even 15 minutes spent really going over the exercises and making sure that they own them and cueing them, right? Because as we know, sometimes people take a little bit to get used to a bodyweight squat the way we want it done, or get used to a pull-up or a push-up. There's many renditions of a push-up, and in my opinion, there's a few right ways to do a push-up, and a lot of it comes down to us coaching it and cueing it. Who this program is designed for is that small group training atmosphere. This really works well with anywhere from 1 to 5 people in an hour group. The nice thing is that the program helps kind of guide you along the workout, so you don't have to spend as much time telling people what to do, right? The idea is that each client is following along and they start to understand the flow of the workout. They start to understand the meaning of the exercises. And that leaves time for you to do what you do best, right? And that's coach, that's cue, that's motivate, and hold accountable. In my experience, it works best when you really put the autonomy in the client's hands to own the program and really understand what a traditional push-up is or what a pull-up, or when you say get into this half kneeling stance, they're not looking at you like a deer in headlights, right? They jump right into that half kneeling stance, and then you can again do what you do best. That said, we'll dig a little bit deeper into how each program is laid out. Each program is going to start off with some sort of pre-warm-up, right? That's going to be your SMR work. And for phase 1, you'll see we program specifically for static stretching, which is going to be more of a 30-second hold per stretch, working to get back to regular length or muscle extensibility. That said, although this program is pre-programmed, whatever assessment type you use, you may want to keep doing that, and feel free to cross off stretches or add stretches or SMR work depending on what that client needs, right? Because at the end of the day, the stretches I have programmed in there are more of a broad term, right? I think everybody's going to benefit from doing all of those as long as they're done correctly. But obviously, you only have so much time to knock out stretches. So if there's going to be stretching or SMR work that is more specific to a client, you're going to want to go ahead and do that. After that, each workout is going to be comprised of a general warm-up, right? So that's going to be more of our mobility workout, our dynamic warm-up and activation, joint stabilization, and stuff like that. That's going to work to get the heart rate a little higher while still warming up the body, right? So moving forward, the workout will then move into some sort of plyometric or power phase, where we'll focus on more plyometric exercises such as box jumps, med ball slams, or tosses. We don't necessarily go as far as Olympic lifting for our programming specifically. Now, if that's in your wheelhouse and that's something you like to do, I'm all for it. I do it myself. However, when working with my clients, I like to stick to the basics, right? I think the risk versus reward is something to consider when we program for clients. But again, if that's within your wheelhouse and you're qualified to do such a thing, then by all means. Moving forward, the bulk of the workout then is going to be that strength and endurance phase, right? So as we progress through this keynote, I'll really break down how the programs are laid out. The reason endurance is the largest pillar is because the whole program is fairly anaerobic, right? So with this program, we're not necessarily taking large gaps of rest, although some people may need a little bit more rest than others before they start their set over again or move on to the next block of sets. The program is extremely anaerobic in nature. And going back to what I said, when you want to tack on another program or an accessory program, running more of an aerobic program is going to be a nice complement to this. So again, it's not that we're taking 3 to 5 minutes of rest between each set. This is more of a go, 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 that strength and conditioning style working out, which seems to be what a lot of people like anyhow. So it's good that it falls within our philosophy. A little bit further, again, the program booklets are made up into 3 phases. Phase 1, which is function. Again, I can't stress enough how important this phase is, yet it's incredibly overlooked in the industry. Really owning the basics, owning body weight movements, owning movement patterns, and really making sure that the core does what it's supposed to do from an anti-rotational standpoint, from an anti-extensional standpoint, before we start to load that pattern in phase 2. As we cover phase 2 in the coming weeks, you'll notice that it's a lot more strength specific exercises. So we're going to start to load the patterns that the clients are learning in phase 1, which is function, right? And don't be afraid, if you have a client and they aren't quite progressed enough to jump into phase two, it wouldn't hurt for them to do another week or two in phase one for them to truly own those movement patterns. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that as we train clients, we don't want to be injuring them. So I put a lot of emphasis on phase one function. I think it means a lot. It's not necessarily the most exciting doing the more basic movements, but it's truly exciting when you watch a client master a traditional push-up and it looks clean, or when they master a squat and the knees aren't caving in, or if they can finally do a pull-up, which is a big milestone for a lot of people. And then lastly, phase three, which is the last 4 weeks of a 12-week program. And that's more geared toward performance and athleticism. So you're going to see a lot more single leg training, a lot more plyometric training done on single leg. And, again, it goes back to that owning phase one, right? So if we progress somebody through to phase two and then to phase three, but they haven't owned the most basic mechanics, that's where we're going to get into a bit of trouble. So again, all three of these phases make up what we call our macro cycle, which is a 12-week block. We will be launching these programs quarterly. So this is officially Q2 or the spring program. Q3 will be coming up. We'll look to launch those programs a good couple weeks before instead of cutting it this close next time. And you'll get your next 12-week block, and then for Q4, another 12-week block. And the idea is, to keep it going, right? So we can keep our vision and our programming vision at the forefront of what we do. You guys will notice as we kind of progress along 2019 and into 2020, we do program a lot for the general consumer. And it is our goal, it's my goal, to really be able to have SGX coaches as the standing point for these programs. So if somebody buys into a program that's not as specific as this, but nonetheless, it's the SGX programming, they'll be able to go directly to an SGX coach and say, hey, I need help doing this, right? So that's how the ecosystem really works nicely from that perspective. All right, so now moving on, we're going to jump into the workout. Attached were PDFs workout 1, 2, and 3. Again, each of those were double-sided. When you print them out, you're going to want to look to get those double-sided. That way you can save on paper and it looks a little bit cleaner. Digging right in, we'll start with phase one. You guys will see here that we have 2 pages, right? Again, double-sided. On the first page, that's where we're really going to cover the first 3 concept, which is SMR static stretching for phase one specifically. Moving on to the next chunk, which is mobility and joint stabilization, followed by our power and speed. Whereas page 2 is going to be the bigger chunk of strength and conditioning. And if you're looking at this, it's dead on with how we did it in the SGX course. You have your 2 strength trisets followed by more of an endurance specific or conditioning phase, which is more body weight crawling movements that are geared toward elevating the heart rate and really maximizing that anaerobic capacity. That said, we'll dig right in and cover each block chunk by chunk. I'll kind of go over the exercises, and then at the end, we'll open it up for some good Q&A. As we go through this, I'll kind of mention it at the end. I did create a video resource hub for these programs specifically. And the reason I did that is because there's a million names for any given exercise. So, you might be reading some of these and you're like, assisted SLDL, right? You might call that something completely different. So the idea was to kind of systematize it, get it on video. That way we're all on the same page. And again, as we progress through 2019, Dr. J and myself will be really looking to have our polished exercise library that will go along with it. And that'll make sense as I cover this template. So with no further ado, I'll jump right in to workout 1 of 3. Before I cover this chunk at the top, you'll notice at the bottom that each program has a tools needed, as well as the phase and the workout. So if you ever get confused on what PDF you're holding, you should be able to take a quick glance down at the bottom right-hand corner. And in the bottom left-hand corner, those are just tools that we suggest that are probably going to be necessary to get this program done. Now, you guys can definitely get creative, and if you don't have access to plyo boxes or a wall to slam med balls across, you can certainly change that up, right? that's the beauty about this program, is that we really wanted to give autonomy to the coaches to really progress and regress exercises or change what they feel like needs to be changed. This is just our vision of what the base program should look like. Digging right in with SMR and static stretching. Again, static stretching is just specific to our phase 1. As we get into phase 2 and 3, you'll notice that changes to active stretching, and phase 3 to a dynamic warm-up. These are the stretches that we believe are going to be the most bang for your buck. Just kind of generalizing every client out there. However, again, whatever assessment process you're using, whether that be an overhead squat analysis or the full-on functional movement screen or whatever assessment tool you're using, right? If you see certain overactive muscles that you think are going to take priority over these stretches, then by all means, please program it in. But that's basically what we have here. You'll notice that we really take a look at the major muscle groups and major issue points, right? So we're always going to be doing some sort of hip flexor stretch, which are, very, very much compromised for your general client, just because everybody's sitting in this, tightened posture all day. The hip flexors seem to get really tight and overactive. So it's crucial that we take care of those, because as we get into phases 2 and 3, you're going to need those guys working the way they're supposed to work. That 90 stretch is going to be more of your hip rotator, which again is a crucial area for a lot of clients. If you take the average client who's sitting in a chair all day, that's another thing that's going to pay the price, is those hip rotators and the piriformis. After that, we cover some sort of adductor stretch. For this, it happens to be a kneeling adductor stretch. We move into a hamstring stretch, a lat stretch, a pec stretch, and even some neck stretching. And in my videos, I cover the neck stretches. It's one of those areas that you want to be kind of careful about. However, it's an area that I think is pretty important, because again, if you think about the average client, what they're doing in the day, they're kind of letting their neck sit forward, and that leads to some stiffness and tightness in the neck that we want to stretch out. That said, this SMR and static stretching scheme is the same for workouts 1, 2, and 3, right? So the exercise variation isn't going to change. So the nice thing about that, while everything else is going to change, the client's going to get used to these stretches. So, they can kind of just jump right into it. They can start with their SMR, move right into that half kneeling hip flexor stretch, so on and so forth. And you can be there again to be that coach and make sure that they're not cheating. My advice has always been for coaches is you want to be there during this more than any other section of the workout. You want to be there for this, because this is where most people are going to cheat. One, it's very uncomfortable, and 2, it happens to be really, really boring. But as we say, it's your vegetables, you got to eat your vegetables, and it's a part of the program. So that said, we'll move right on. The next section is the mobility and joint stabilization. The mobility also stays the same for workouts 1 through 3 in phase 1. You will see a change in those exercises in phase 2 and 3. But again, the nice thing is that a client will get used to it. So with our mobility phase, we're looking to really cover the main joints that we want to work on from a mobility standpoint. That's going to be the ankles, the hips, and the shoulders, also the necks and the wrist. But the 3 most important, and probably the ones that are going to need the most emphasis, are going to be those ankles, hips, and shoulders. So looking at the ankles, we're going to look to increase range of motion through the half kneeling ankle drive. Again, this is all videoed on a resource hub, so if you have a question about it, or how we best see it done, I've kind of run through those cues. With a already programmed in set and rep scheme, so we're looking at 6 each side. Band assisted leg lowers for hip mobility. I typically like to see this done in a doorway. However, I don't think it's feasible for most people. We can explain that much further on. So we use a big super band. And then some sort of T-spine rotation for phase 1. We have programmed in here quadruped T-spine rotation with 6 reps on each side. And then you get your quadruped neck nods, quadruped wrist rock. So that's it for mobility. Again, if questions are starting to arise as I'm covering this, I can't see them, but feel free to plug away in the comment box and we'll get to them at the end. Moving on to the joint stabilization, you'll notice that for each workout, we've programmed in a lower body and an upper body, as well as, for the most part, some sort of full body joint stabilization exercise. So this is going to be more to get the body activated, get the hips moving, get the shoulders moving before we get into any real movement. Taking a look at the exercises, we got the supine shoulder slides, we got some sort of hip lift variation, and the toe touch to squat, which is going to be the full body. Those will change for workout 1 through 3, so you will notice different activation and joint stabilization exercises. Moving on, you'll kind of notice a flow. So, after the client goes through and knocks out their static stretching, their SMR work, their mobility, and their joint stabilization, they're going to move into the workout portion. So now this is where things get a little bit more serious. We're going to get to the fun stuff. We've paid our dues, and now we're ready to start moving. The body should be warmed up. The central nervous system should be fired up. The core temperature should be up and, prepared for movement. As far as power and speed, or speed, agility, and quickness, ideally we have some sort of lower body and upper body power exercise or plyometric movement programmed in. For here, you can see that we have a box jump with a 3-second stick, really owning that movement with a hip hinge to chest pass. That is done with a med ball and a wall. That is one exercise that I was not able to film, but I will be filming it when I get the opportunity here this week. It's a great upper body power exercise. Clients have a lot of fun with it. Being able to throw a med ball against a wall is really fun, and people love it. So you can see here that I have the reps programmed in, 2 sets with 8 reps each of the box jumps and 2 sets of 10 reps for the hip hinge to chest pass. You can see here as this program lays out, it's good for 4 weeks, right? So that client, or you, the coach, will hold on to this program for that client for the whole 4 weeks. And you'll notice that I left it open for weeks 2, 3, and 4 for you guys to program in. And just a quick refresher, that 4th week should be more of a tailored down rest and recovery week as we progress into a brand new phase, a little bit more of a challenging phase. Again, the weight is left open for everything. That is up to you as the coach to program in, or for the client. Eventually you're going to have veteran clients who can just write it in themselves. And that's ideal, right? You want them doing most of the work so you can do what you do best. So that's it for the first page for workout 1. Jumping into the back page, you'll notice from the overviewing template that it's broken down into 3 trisets. The first triset, we program in a knee dominant movement with a horizontal push and some sort of anti-extension exercise, right? So there's a rhyme and a rhythm to every exercise that we programmed in here. It wasn't just a random calculator. At the end of the day, clients only have so much time to get a workout in, and we want to make sure that every workout that we put out there truly has the most bang for its buck, right? So we really want to train movement patterns across the board in each of these workouts. We're not necessarily looking to, spend 30 minutes on the chest or 30 minutes on the legs, right? We really want to get the body moving in all planes of motion. We want the client to truly master these movements, because it's gonna be awesome for them if they can do this. It's just, they're gonna feel better, they're gonna move better, and then they're gonna be able to do things that they never thought possible, right? You guys have all experienced that with the Spartan race. It's just amazing to see clients overcome things that they never thought they could do. But it all starts here. The next triset, moving on, we have some sort of hip dominant variation with a pull. It happens to be a vertical pull here, and some sort of anti-rotational exercise. Again, all of these are videoed, but we have a bilateral hip lift with 3-second hold. Yes, that is programmed in twice. Never do enough hip lifts, in my opinion. They're a fantastic exercise, highly underutilized. We got our pull-ups in there, and we have our half kneeling chop. Something to cover is, you'll notice that R and the P, I guess I should have covered this a little bit earlier, but that R and the P stands for regression and progression. There's a line for each of them. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to program a progression or a regression, but if that case comes up where you have a client who can't quite do a pull-up, right, now you're going to take the regression line and write in the next regression, which would be some sort of band-assisted pull-up, right? So that's going to be on you to write in that progression or regression. The progression could be a weighted pull-up or a different grip pull-up, like a switch grip pull-up or anything of that nature. So that's where, it really comes into play as a coach to own that exercise library and know what's next, what precedes that exercise, and what falls before or what falls after it. And then lastly, the endurance is going to be a lot of crawling and carrying. Those are staples in our program. Those are exercises we absolutely stand behind. You're going to see a lot of bear crawling. You're going to see a lot of farmer and suitcase walks. We're gonna try and work in some sort of crawl and some sort of carry, as well as some sort of full body conditioning. You can see there we have our hinge jumps programmed in. And again, the videos cover it, but a hinge jump is a deadlift jump without weight. So it's not a squat jump, it's more getting the hips back and jumping forward. Again, progression, regression there for you to program it in. So you can program your iso bear crawls if clients don't want to do the regular. The farmer walk, you can change up the way it's done. If you want to do a racked walk, that's totally up to you. Again, this is just the base exercise that we believe is going to be the best for phase one for most clients. Now that we have a better understanding of the program template itself, I've officially covered the first workout. I'm going to breeze a little bit quicker through workouts 2 and 3. I'll cover some of the exercises, but again, I think that video support is really going to answer a lot of the questions as far as wording, or if there was any confusion on what a hinge jump is, or anything of that nature. But again, at the bottom, you'll see again the phase, the workout, and the tools needed. Up at the top, you have your weeks, you have your reps and the weights. LB stands for pounds, obviously, but that doesn't mean that that's the weight somebody's going to use. It could be distance. It's just the general term we put down there. So moving on, again, to workout 2, you'll notice that the SMR and static stretching section are identical to the first workout. It is that way on purpose. We want people to familiarize themselves with these stretches. And the other same thing is the mobility section. What's going to vary is your joint stabilization or your activation section, right? So you'll notice that we have 3 different exercises here. We have an inchworm, which is a fantastic shoulder stability exercise. You can throw in a push-up there if people are feeling like they want to. You get your mini band walk. We're going to be doing, we put a large emphasis on lateral and linear movements. And then a reverse lunge with T-spine rotation. So that's going to be that full body, wake up the body, get the body moving, used to movement. Moving on, in the power section, we have our upper body power being the overhead slam. That's going to be a favorite exercise you see throughout our programming series. 1, because it's easy to do, most clients can do it. And 2, because all you need access to is either some sort of med ball, a sandbag, a rock. It's nice because you can program it literally anywhere. You don't want to slam it on the floor if you have neighbors below you, that's all. And the lower body, we have the single leg hop to double leg stick. Again, that is filmed to clear up any questions about what that exercise is, because even sometimes I look at that and I'm like, what is that? So good to know that that's up on the exercise library. Reps, again, are programmed in, but the regression and progression is up to you, the coach. Workout 2, the strength and conditioning portion. The lateral bodyweight squat is going to be our knee dominant exercise. We're going to have a half kneeling cable press for our horizontal push. And for our anti-extension core, we're going to be doing side planks. And jumping right on through, our hip dominant is going to be an assisted single leg deadlift with reach. So this is a bit of an advanced exercise. This is best done, you'll notice that it says assisted, with a suspension trainer or with a rig in front where they can deload the pattern and really focus on that reach, keeping the hips closed and focusing on that core movement. It's going to be an awesome stretch for them. It's going to be an awesome hip dominant exercise. And the reason it's programmed as assisted in phase 1 is because in phase 2 and 3, we're going to be loading that pattern. And it's crucial that clients really understand this movement because it's super complex. It takes a lot of cueing. And definitely don't be afraid to reset somebody into an assisted position, right? I think a lot of people get ahead of themselves and they want to load that pattern up with some kettlebells or even a barbell I've seen, but the form is just not there. And I always err on the side of caution. I'm a pretty strict coach myself. I like to make sure that if it's not looking crisp and clean, I'm not putting weight in anybody's hand. That's just the way I do it. So I'm definitely not afraid to regress somebody to a suspension assisted single leg deadlift to get them to really own that movement. Moving on, we have a half kneeling cable row for that horizontal pull and a half kneeling lift for the anti-rotational exercise. Again, you'll notice a lot of chopping and lifting variations in our programs. They're a fantastic core exercise for anti-rotation and for trunk stability. They're personally one of my favorites. And again, they can be done literally anywhere. If you don't have access to a cable machine, you know, you can do it with a kettlebell, you can do it with a dumbbell, you can do it with a med ball, you can do it with a rock. It's just a fantastic exercise. And then lastly, we have our endurance. Here we have our crawl as the crab walk. As our carry, we have the suitcase carry, which is just one arm, and we have our mountain climber for that full body endurance. That's it for workout 2. Jumping right ahead, we'll dive into workout 3. Again, SMR and static stretching is identical to workouts 1 through 3, and so is the mobility. You'll notice 3 different exercises for our joint stabilization phase. We've got our arm circle. Again, that's covered on the Video University. This is a great exercise to wake up the scaps, the shoulders, everything. We got our standing hinge with reach, and we have our seal jacks. Moving into power, we have our half kneeling rotational toss as our upper body power. That's also another awesome exercise. One thing to note is that a lot of these power development exercises are programmed with some sort of med ball wall in mind, right? Some sort of cinder block wall that you can slam a med ball against that's not going to, you know, crumble. It's not going to reverberate to your neighbor's house or the neighboring gym or, you know, wherever you may be programming this. You know, so if you don't have one, look to, before you regress the exercise or change it totally, I would look to program that into your facility, whether, you know, you're working at a gym or have your own studio or you know, wherever you're working out of. You know, I would put a lot of stock into having some sort of wall available so you can slam away at it and have some fun. Again, clients love it. Something about just, you know, taking a med ball and slamming it against a wall is just as exciting as slamming it against the ground. It's just going to be a different movement. Taking a look at the backside, we have our strength conditioning. For our knee dominant exercise, we have a reverse lunge to knee drive, right? So that knee drive is just going to be the stability component of coming up and owning it. We have a half kneeling anterior shoulder press, and we have an exercise ball ab rollout. So that covers our semi-vertical push, and it covers our anti-extensional exercise. Moving on to our hip dominant and pull and anti-rotation, we have eccentric leg curls, which is a fantastic exercise. If you don't have a slide board, you can use sliders, or, you know, you just need some sort of slick surface. You know, wood floors work great, or, you know, if you have sliders, it's quite difficult to do on rubber if you have rubber flooring. Just something to consider. The X pull down is going to be your vertical pull, a good regression to a pull up, great scap stability exercise as well. And then we have an anti-rotational press out for anti-rotational core exercise. And last but not least, we'll jump right into our conditioning. Here we have the lateral bear crawl with the farmer walk again. I can't reiterate this enough. You know, you're going to see loads of farmer walks for obvious reasons. You know, being able to walk with a load and really own that movement is crucial. You guys have all seen it in the race. That bucket carries a killer. Just, you know, thrashes the lower back before the next obstacle or before you run. So this is going to be awesome for clients to really own that and build that strong pillar. And then the row machine, right? Again, some of this stuff is specific to equipment. If you don't have access to a rower, feel free to substitute any type of, you know, full body conditioning. You know, air bike sprints are great. Or, you know, I mean, if you have to resort to it, you always got run in place. You know, that's always a bare minimum. It's gonna do the trick. That said, the video support, there's just a quick example of what it is. It's basically each section of each workout is filmed with me going through the cues. You're going to see some exercises. You're like, oh yeah, I know how to do a bodyweight squat, and that's totally fine. I just filmed it anyway to really cover the cueing and the movement that we want to see, the movement that we get behind as Spartan. It may be a little bit different than what you're used to, or, you know, you might take away something from it. So I'd encourage you to watch all the videos, and, you know, you always have access to me if you want to direct message me on the private Facebook page, or just reach out to my email. I'm happy to answer any questions or, you know, go about that. And then to end this presentation and open it up, that only leaves the what's to come, and that's phase 2, right? So you guys will have phase 2 in your inbox here in the next few weeks, as well as phase 3. Again, ideally, Our goal is to have these phases in your hands well before launch date. This initiative was, we really did just want to get in your hands for Q2 and get ahead of it. So that's why we rushed it this time. But in the future, we're going to look to get this stuff out of the way. That way you can build a little hype with your clientele and, get them excited about the program. And, one last closing note before I, give the screen back to Dr. J. You're definitely not going to offend us if you don't use the programs. If you decide that, hey, this seems like a little bit too much to implement, or I've already got a good thing going, that's awesome. I heard Dr. J say it a million times, and I love that he says it. At the end of the day, we want all of our SGX coaches to know how to program. And that to us is key. Again, the reason we did this was to kind of unify our message and our program to get something that, the end-facing consumer can look at and say, oh, okay, that's what Spartan programming is, or that's what Spartan training is. But, ideally, everybody knows how to program, and that's why we left it open for that progression, regression, and the rest of the reps and stuff. So that's all I got. I will go ahead and jump this screen back to Dr. J, and we can officially open it up to any questions or answers that I may have. All right, so I'm just now reading some of these. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to look at them as my screen was up. Let's see what we got. So is this a similar format to the content Spartan Strong coaches receive? Coach Dustin, to answer your question quickly, this is a much different format from the Spartan Strong. Spartan Strong is going to be geared toward more Group X style, larger groups of anywhere from 10 plus, ideally 20 to 30. This is going to be programming that should be manipulated for the client, right? So this is designed more for that 1 to 5 range. This can be done on a one-on-one setting, but it works best in a 1 to 5 setting. If that doesn't answer your question, feel free to follow up. Taking a look, what else do we have here? Joe, please elaborate more on the video resource hub. Please provide a link. Okay, so this for the first round, the videos were done by myself. So I happen to have a professional camera, so I just kind of filmed them in the little studio that I have. So we are going to look to upload them to a YouTube page. So it'll be kind of clunky to get the first round out, but as we get Q2 and Q3 and Q4, Q3, 4, and so on and so forth programmed, we're going to have we're going to look to have an actual official exercise library that you guys can log on to, that you guys can then see the exercises we get behind, and you can, really see it from our perspective. So, those videos, we're going to look to hopefully get them up either this week or next to really give you guys a cue. I'm going to work, at light speed to get them out as soon as possible. Moving on, let's see. A lot of questions of where the videos are located. Hopefully I've answered that. Who gets access to these programs? Rob, I think your question, hopefully I can answer it with this. If not, feel free to elaborate. Access to the programs is the SGX coach base only, right? So you guys are the only ones who have this official programming. The programs, the race day readiness programs that go out to racers is a much different program. For the time being, the idea is that they at one point fall in line with one another. That way, a coach can bring their program to, or a racer can bring a program to you and say, "Hey, I'm ready to get in shape for this race, but I need some support," and then you can take them on to the next level. So there's a lot more thought, I would say, that's put into these programs from a coaching standpoint. Whereas the racer program is more, for them. Coach Dustin, again, every quarter we receive new content. So yeah, I kind of want to touch on that a little bit. So every quarter we're going to be looking to launch a new set of 12-week programs. The phases will obviously remain the same. So we'll obviously have the same focus on function, fitness, and performance. However, the exercise variance is what's going to change. You're going to see a slight change in exercise selection. However, it's not going to be that far off from our philosophy. And it's important that us as coaches really get in the mindset of teaching this to clients that, there's a reason we go phase one function to fitness to performance and then back to function, right? There's a method to it, right? There's science behind it. So, you're going to get a lot of coaches or a lot of clients who come back and say, hey, why am I going back to, body weight movements? But, what they're not realizing is that it's, higher reps and, it's just scientifically proven, it's something we got to do and get behind. I think far too often us as coaches get a little too excited to change up the exercises and just have too much fun. And we really want to focus on the core philosophy of doing it, phase by phase. Gotcha. Reading through some questions. Coach Dustin again, we receive all. Gotcha. Yep, covered that. Yeah. So just to elaborate on that, Dustin, one more time. Again, we launched these pretty quickly. The goal is to give all three phases up front. That way you guys have a chance to dwell on it, really understand it, and ask questions as they come. The way I see this unfolding is, and the reason we launched it was to get feedback from you guys. So as you start coaching clients, you'll come back with feedback, which is exactly what we want. But the way I see this is that it's going to turn into an official spiral bound booklet. It's going to look a lot cleaner. And then the entire phase 1, 2, and 3 will be in that booklet. I think it'll feel a lot more official. It'll be Spartan branded. Again, this is the hope, not to overpromise, but I think this is the direction that we really want to take it. Again, because it's going to look a lot more professional. You can officially hand that to a client. It's going to be clean, crisp, and they're going to feel like they're getting something, even if it doesn't mean anything to them, right? They can't read it and be like, oh, I know how to do this. Eventually they will, but they're going to get something and it's going to be like, wow, okay, cool. Because far too often training is intangible, right? So somebody's buying a service, they don't necessarily feel like they got something, right? You walk into a store, you buy a pair of jeans, and you walk away feeling gratified, right? You buy sessions with a trainer, you buy a program with a trainer, you're kind of buying the future and hoping that it's going to work. And this program is one aspect that'll help kind of alleviate that consumer fear and give them something tangible. Like, okay, I got something for the money I just gave, even though we all know that the value they're going to get is going to be tenfold with the coaching. Question was, any burpees in the program? There will absolutely be burpees in the program. We haven't programmed them into phase 1. They're going to be into phase 2 and 3. Again, the idea is to really own each movement pattern in that strength phase is actually kind of made up of a burpee. So we want to own the squat. We want to own that hinge jump. We want to own the push up. We want to own the mountain climber. And then as they own each individual part, then we're really going to get in and focus on the burpees. You can always throw it in there as you can just pop it in anytime you want as a regression or progression. But that was just kind of my thinking behind it, was we want to own each individual movement before we stack them all together, right? Because the burpee is an excellent exercise because it's going to encompass it all. But far too often, most clients are ill-equipped to knock out a good burpee. And that repetition can lead to some injury. But feel free. If you have clients that got some stellar burpees, program in them, and Christian, I'm not sure your question. A good idea would be client monitoring application. If you want to elaborate on that, I'd be happy to take a stab at it. It sounds like a good idea. I'm just not quite sure what it is.
Sam, I think he might be referring to like some type of online system that if we have 150 coaches that are actually following this program to the letter, that we have some type of online program that people could and then access it on their phone as they're going through the workouts and upload, the reps that they did, the resistance that they did, and then, kind of as a coach, you could monitor their athletes' performance, through the program as a group or as an individual. So But yeah, so we don't have anything like that just yet, but it's a great idea for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been tossed around HQ for a while now, and it's definitely something we're looking to in the future. I think it's a must as we kind of grow into this technology-ridden era, to get ahead of it. So totally agree. Joe, your question with the digital version of the template, I think that ties right into the previous question. Ideally, we can get this up into a mobile platform, and I think as we progress through this, I think what we wanted to do first was test it and get a lot of feedback from the coaches and see what changes we want to make, if any. And then I think the next step is to really look at what technology we can put this into. Ideally, if I could pull the trigger right now, absolutely. We'd have a mobile app up and running that would be sleek, clean, and looking good. But for the time being, I think this is what we'll call a little bit of a test phase, and really see where it goes.
And so, folks that are on this call, that if you didn't get the templates, I did send out the templates to, with the email that had the invite to this webinar. So if you can dig that out and find that, you'll find the attachments there. But I'll also reattach it to the email the follow-up email to this presentation with the recording of the webinar, so you'll get them a second time as well. So be looking for that in the next 72 hours. But just keep an eye out for it. If for some reason you don't receive it, just shoot me an email, message me on Facebook, and I'll make sure that it gets to you. Just make sure if you do message me on Facebook, make sure you send me your email address too. Sometimes you've changed your email address and we haven't changed it on our end. So, yeah, so look for that.
Yeah, great. And as we kind of progress through this, we're gonna look to clean up the way we send it out. One quick thing to mention is we like I keep mentioning, we have a lot of good stuff on the radar for 2019, and I can't wait to slowly release it all and really kind of build this community. Like I said, we've got a phenomenal community. One thing that we'll be looking to put together here very shortly in 2020 in January is a kind of like a big seminar, a workshop where we invite coaches from all over the world to attend. The idea is to have speakers of all sorts. Obviously, Dr. J will be up there speaking, doing what he does best. But the idea is to cover many topics and really do a lot of hands-on stuff. So that's something to look forward to. It's in its beginning stages. It's in its conception stage, but it's something that we're going to be working full steam ahead on to really get that up and running. A big conference, an SGX conference, as it said. So as the final few questions come in, we'll kind of close this out and wrap it up. So the nice thing is that for the most part, like I said, about 90% of this, 95% of this is filmed. And if it's as easy as getting it downloaded to a YouTube page and a link to you guys, that can be done very quickly because they're waiting for launch. So if like I said, I'm going to work very quickly because I know there may be some questions about exercises, and hopefully these videos answer them. But I'll kind of leave it out to the group. Were there any specific questions on programming that you guys had when you went through the program?
Hey Sam, as we're waiting for those questions to come in, I just wanted to thank you for the work that you put in on this. This is outstanding. In fact, I just updated the image on your contact in my phone to the Macho Man because this work has been savage. Great job. I really appreciate it. I think everyone here can would agree with that. So thanks again.
No, thank you, Dr. J. I appreciate it. It's been an outstanding ride so far being a part of this. Like I said, one thing I kind of half expected when launching this program was a lot of questiony feedback. But this group is unbelievable. I think the engagement that we have here in the community that we have is something to be sought after. So I'm totally stoked to be a part of this, and thank you. Rob, it looks like you're right on the same page. That's great to hear. Happy to know that. Joe, your question about the 2 versus 3 sets, that's a great question. The reason this is programmed more for a beginner, and I'll kind of answer this with two answers. One, the reason it's 2 is to really get them to own the movements, and it's hard to do that when they're fatiguing. That doesn't mean that 3 sets can't be programmed in if the time allows, especially as somebody finishes an entire 12-week program, right? You'll notice that you start back to function, but those who have completed the 12-week program, you can program in, higher set ranges, because they're going to be able to do it a lot faster. They're going to understand the movements. They're going to be a lot more anaerobically ready for it. So that's kind of up to interpretation. Again, I was torn between what to do, as I was thinking Gen Pop, people who are kind of new to programming. So that's kind of where that was. One thing, and just to touch on this mastermind conference, it would be very helpful for anybody listening in, or anybody who listens to the recording, to submit your ideas or the things that you'd like to see out there, right? Again, this is going to be an educational seminar that we're looking to put together. If there are certain topics that you see that hold a lot of weight, or that you'd like to get better at, I know running always comes to top of mind of, I want to know more about running. I want to know more about this. We absolutely love feedback. Again, this whole thing is with the coach in mind. So, we could take a stab at it and think what we would think would be the best, but ultimately the feedback you guys provide is going to be unbelievably important. So, feel free to message me with any ideas you have over the coming weeks, over the coming quarter. We got plenty of time, but again, we're going to look to move on that and really make it something awesome. And it looks like Brian just downloaded the dates. Take a look at that. It looks like we're settling on January 10th through the 12th for the 2020 Southern California Summit. So even as we speak, it's beginning to materialize. That's awesome. Coach Dustin, so the information you'll be receiving in the coming days will be access to the videos that are specific to phase 1, as well as the recording. And Dr. J will again attach the PDFs if you didn't get them on the original email. Phases 2 and 3 will be over the next week or two. Then you'll get the next 3, and then the next 3. So 6 more programs will be coming. And then we'll set up another conference like this to really dig in and cover those. It should go a little bit quicker because we've covered the base, and it'll be really just jumping in and look to do a lot more Q&A. If that didn't answer your question, feel free to follow up. Perfect. Sounds like I got it. Welcome, Fernando. Good to see you on here. Not too entirely sure yet, Joe. That'll be We'll find out shortly, I guess,
The
where it
top
will be
secret
held.
location right now.
That's right. That's right. Hopefully, as long as it's somewhere warm, it doesn't matter to me. That's for sure. Uh, Gennaro, it looks like you did miss the webinar, but don't worry if you just kind of logged on in the past 5, 10 minutes. This has been pre-recorded, so you can always jump on and watch it at your own speed. But we are at the tail end of it as we round into the 8 o'clock hour here on the East Coast. Um, so no worries. Yeah, I truly don't know what time zone Arizona is in anyhow. They aren't they in two time zones?
I think they're in the twilight zone.
That sounds accurate. Gotcha. So it sounds like you're a good 3 hours behind us. No worries. Well, as we round into the hour here, I guess we'll wrap it up. Again, any questions that you guys have, feel free to follow up with me. A lot of you guys have me on Facebook. You can just send me a direct message, and I'll answer them as I get to them. I do my best to answer them throughout the day. Um, and I think we're good to go. So it's been an absolute pleasure presenting, and I can't wait to continue this and really be a part of this community.
Awesome. Aru, everybody.
Yeah, Aru.